Alright. I think this thing's working. Is this thing working? Twitch says I'm live. Streamlabs says I'm live. I'm also recording this, so this is kind of a informal, impromptu kind of thing. I just thought about doing this a couple days ago after I wrapped up my Ace Attorney stream and kind of fleshed it out over the course of the day yesterday. But today, before I started Final Fantasy XII, I really wanted to talk about the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, because they just came out this week on Steam and mobile, and I do plan on using them to stream at some point, but that's probably going to be at least 6 months down the road. And so in order to be a little bit more timely, I thought I'd give my first impressions on them. First off, this is not sponsored in any way. I just want to clarify that. These are my own opinions on these games. I haven't been given any money or proprietary access to these, of course. I have less than 50 followers. Anyway. I've been waiting for these old Final Fantasy games to be remastered with sprites graphics for years. When the mobile ones came out that had the hand-drawn graphics, I really didn't like them. Mostly for personal aesthetic reasons. They're probably fine games, though I've heard some people are not very impressed with how they control, especially on a computer, but I don't have any. I never bought those. I don't have any experience with how those handled or anything like that. So take that all into consideration when I talk about these. Some of the stuff might be just nostalgia goggles, because I love the look of the GBA versions of these games, and that's kind of what this is emulating, and we'll go into that a little bit more. Across the board, I'm really happy with these. If you just want an initial impression and then you can leave the video, that's fine. There can be some weirdness, though, and we'll talk about that in a bit. I haven't played all the way through any of the first 3 games yet. 4, 5, and 6 still haven't come out. I'm going to speculate on what 4, 5, and 6 could do a little bit, mostly coming from the lens of Final Fantasy V, because I just did 2 playthroughs and I'm working on a 3rd one of that. So, but I feel like I still want to talk about them. I'm not necessarily trying to sell you on them, but I wanted to give these things a fair shake, because a lot of what I've seen a few places say, "Yo, yeah, these are good," but it seems like I'm seeing more negative things than positive things. So I just want to kind of even the balance a little bit. I'm going to use Final Fantasy II to talk about most of this stuff. I will bring up Final Fantasy III a little bit on screen, just so I can show you a couple key things that are different that 2 won't be able to show us. So, also, Final Fantasy II throws a lot at you right at the beginning of the game. So, let's go ahead and get into this, because it's already been 4 minutes. The first thing I'm going to bring up is the text. This was the biggest thing that came up when the games were first shown, is the text. As you can tell, it's pretty narrow. It doesn't take up a whole lot of the screen, and I get the feeling that they kind of wanted to go for how the Final Fantasy font looked with how narrow it was, but I do have another thing that I think was a key factor in that. Unfortunately, if you go into language settings, there really isn't a way to change the font. But if you go into the Japanese, you'll notice that the font is a little wider, and that is a key thing. That's a disclaimer that they show in the Japanese things. You notice how much wider the font is here? We'll get to that in a bit. But going back into the options here, go back into English so that we can actually read what's on screen. When you go into a new game, and it allows you to name your characters. It says, select a name for the character. Up to 6 full-width characters or 12 half-width characters can be used for the names. That doesn't really make sense for us. We don't really differentiate between full-width and half-width characters. But you know who does? Japan. So this is something that I think also brought around the narrow English font, is in order for it to work with their system, they had to have it treated like half-width characters. And in order to do that, they just made the font narrow. But no big deal. So another thing that I'm going to mention really quick is if you're going to play these games, I highly recommend a controller. The keyboard controls you can set up yourself. They're fine. They'll work. But I much prefer play these with a controller. That's just my personal opinion, though. Anyway, I'm going to start this up while I talk a little bit more about a couple of other things. First off, these opening cutscenes aren't skippable. So if you're playing these games for a second or third time, you're not going to be able to skip this. I wish there was a way to skip it, or at least speed it up. You may notice, and we'll see it when the battle screen comes up, there is what looks like a fast forward button, but it's not. That's another thing that I think these games would benefit from, that the 7, 8, and 9 remakes actually have. The 7, 8, and 9 remakes have a fast forward function that allows you to fast forward the game 3 times the speed. These games don't have that. You have to travel at normal speed. There is one feature, which we'll see in just a bit, that does allow you to speed up combat at least, but it's not a fast forward button, and that's kind of a bummer. But the graphics, as you're seeing, they're kind of this blend of new mixed with Game Boy Advanced aesthetic, and you'll see more of that as it comes up. First off, let's look at the battle screen. Let's listen to this music. Easily the best part of these remakes is the music. They actually had Uematsu help out with this stuff, and it sounds incredible. And I'll give you a direct comparison later with one of the other songs in this game. But you notice the numbers are actually very clear and visible compared to this narrow text. The numbers are taken from the Japanese font, not from the English font, which I find odd. But you'll see that button in the top left that shows the fast forward. That's actually just auto battle. So if you hit on a controller, if you hit X, it'll just kick on auto battle, and whatever the last thing that you entered for each character, so like Fury and I just selected attack, that's what he's going to use in auto battle from that point forward. So it just uses your most recent command for each character. Something else I wanted to bring up about the battle screen specifically is in the initial material, when they showed the battle screen, it looked really sparse, and I don't know if that's still going to be the case with the Super Nintendo versions when they come out, but with these versions at least, they're not as sparse as they initially looked, and I think they adjusted that. I'm playing at 1600 by 900 on here. Maybe with the higher resolutions it doesn't look as good, but they actually look pretty good here. I'm very happy with them. The other reason I think they took some assets from the Game Boy Advance version is these 7 hits, the numbers that pop up. That is exactly how they look in the Game Boy Advance version of Final Fantasy II. So now we're getting into a little lengthy cutscene here. You'll notice these sparkles. Those are not traditional pixel art. Those are being passed through a filter. It would be my guess. And we'll see why in just a second. But these effects actually look really good, and there's some status ailments that use these effects now. like Paralyze in the old games, and they were doing this on the. They changed how they looked from the old games to the Game Boy Advance versions and PlayStation versions to here. The Game Boy Advance versions, when you were paralyzed, had these little zigzag lines that pulsed back and forth next to your character. On these remakes, it's just a lightning effect that courses down your character. It's not a pixel sprite. It's an actual visual effect, kind of similar to these glowing bits here. I think it looks good. I can understand not being able, or it not being, true to original, but these games aren't true to original anyway. At least graphics-wise, they've readjusted how all the graphics work, so I don't have any problem with it. I like the sprite art for the characters more than anything else. So we're getting close to where I want to do a quick comparison here when it comes to the music. Because like I mentioned before, Uematsu helped with this music quite a bit. So I'm going to leave this text box here. I'm going to actually mute the music here because I want to have you listen to the original, which if you get these games on Steam right now, you will get a few extras, which include some wallpapers and then 3 time-lapse remixes, which play the original version of the song first from the NES. So let me play that real quick. So that's the original version of the song from the NES version of the game. It's just a simple call response, and that just endlessly loops. We're going to listen to the new version of it right here. My mouse will not let me turn off the overlay. Hold on. Oh, the music didn't load. That's really funny, actually. There it goes. There are 2 different instrumentations of the music that they play back and forth as the song loops. I love this, and I am so excited to see what they do with the Super Nintendo games, because I think this approach could really serve a lot of those games very well. There are a number of great Final Fantasy songs in 4, 5, and 6 that could be amplified even more from this approach, and I'm super excited to see that. Now, you'll notice that there was that weird little thing with things not loading there. So this uses the Unity engine. Those sound effects, by the way, are taken straight from the remakes of these games that came from the Game Boy Advance and the PlayStation 1. But anyway, the Unity engine can sometimes take a little while to load things, and we'll see that when I switch over to Final Fantasy III, probably. But yeah, I have control now. By the way, you walk diagonally in these, which does impact gameplay. If you're poisoned, in some games you take damage every step, and moving diagonally, you cut out a step. So if you can move diagonally all the way across a room, you cut out half the steps that you would have normally taken. So menu screen time. Let's go into the settings here. You've got your normal cursor memory. With the auto battle, you can have it automatically turn itself off at the beginning of every fight, which I would recommend. You never know what you're going to come across when it comes to random encounters. Then we get into some meters here. The brightness is more of a contrast meter. It's not much of a brightness meter, but think of it as contrast, because if you notice, if I bring it really high, yeah, you lose all the detail in Furion's hat, headband, bandana thing. The master volume goes from 0 to 100, but the background music and sound effects volume meters, which allow you to do the mixing, only go from 0 to 10. I don't know why that is, and I think that's really strange. This is where you can set up your gamepad and keyboard. Returning to the title screen and quitting games is under the configuration menu and not on the menu itself, which is also strange. I skipped graphics display for a reason, because this is the main option I want to take a look at. So if you notice the portraits here, in 1 and 3, they didn't really have detailed portraits. With 2, they did. And with 4, 5, and 6, they also will. The portraits look okay, but they're a little clunky because, I mean, pixel graphics, right? When we go to configuration and change the graphics display to classic, it just kind of puts this overlay of scan lines, which, you know, a lot of classic games getting remastered have this option. The Sega Genesis collection does this as well, and I could probably list off 100 others that do, but it actually makes that look a little bit better. But then you actually get back into the game with this setting, it is super blurry. I think they did this on purpose to mimic the blur that the CRT would have created on the pixel graphics. The lines do look smoother when you look at the curved lines, like around Furion's head. It looks alright, but when you're really close up to it like this, it's really distracting, especially since the text boxes and everything aren't blurred. Those are sharp. It's a really weird... Again, I think that's part of how Unity handles filters. They wanted to put a filter specifically on the gameplay stuff. But if you look at the flames in the back, that's 2 filters on those. Those look really good. And on a smaller screen, so like if I just do this real quick, it kind of looks better on a smaller screen. So why they didn't already plan on putting this on the Switch, I have no idea. But I think these would work really well on the Switch as a handheld device with this filter available to them. I think that would actually look pretty good. Anyway, let's go back to standard before our eyes bleed. And there's a quick save option, which in previous iterations, if you quick saved, it would bookmark the game and then immediately quit out to the title screen. In this, it doesn't. It actually holds on to that quick save while you continue playing the game. So it's kind of like the Wii U's virtual console bookmark system in that respect. You can do that. If something goes wrong, you can just click back to the title screen. Like, I'm going to do other things here. I'm actually going to create a standard save as well. Also, I like these little bubbles that pop up when you get to something interactable. That's actually kind of nice. But anyway, little gameplay features. Oh, right. Minimap. That was something else I was going to talk about. So you see the minimap in the top right corner. In towns and in dungeons and in buildings, they're going to have this look to them. If you press X, it actually allows you to take a look at these. You can also switch to the default world map view, and these are literally just zoomed out versions of the actual maps. This one just has kind of a filter, a color filter over it, but it clearly labels where each of the buildings are, which is great. That bed sign, I think, is new to these games, but the other icons have been taken from previous remakes. Because I remember seeing that shield sign design in the Game Boy Advance version. Same thing with the sword there, same thing with this symbol for the magic shop. That's all stuff they've done before. On the world map, your mini-map looks like this, and you can actually change the size of it, which is really cool. All the locations you've discovered are a yellow dot, so if you know where all the different things are, on the mini-map, you can clearly see 2 more walled cities that I haven't been to yet. Those will get yellow dots once I get there. And you can see it keeps track of the number of chests and the number of items that you've collected from the locations. There are actually achievements tied to that on the Steam version. So a little quality of life thing there, I guess. But I'm going to do a save here. I'm going to save in file 2. There are 20 save slots, by the way. Way more than you would actually need. So that's kind of nice. And then I'm going to kick back to the title screen. Okay. Now if I load game here, my quick save is a different slot. So that allows you to, again, bookmark if you're getting ready to go into a boss fight and you haven't been able to save for a while, especially in these old NES games that did not have save points in the middle of dungeons. That's a lifesaver. This game also autosaves. So whenever you enter an area, exit an area, I think also when you move between floors in a dungeon, it'll autosave. So if you get into a boss fight or way in over your head, you're not going to lose all that progress. Thank God. But yeah, in terms of extras, there's a music player so you can listen to all of the music, which is really neat. It has these little animations, which is cool. So you can listen to all of the music kind of on your own time. And it also has a gallery, which unlocks, which has a bunch of concept art and things like that, which is, kind of neat. I like the bestiary in this game, because normally it's just a plain old list. But if you go to display map, you can actually see the creatures on the map where they normally appear. You can also go in and look at what can be encountered in towns and stuff like that. It's really cool. I like this view a lot, and I get the feeling this was more made for mobile than anything else. But that looks really nice. Really quick, let me check my notes and make sure I haven't missed anything. I don't think I have. Yeah. So far, so good. So really quick, I'm going to go to my pause screen. I'm going to bring up Final Fantasy III really quick. Because I want to show the difference that text makes when you do the little text swap. And really, all you have to do to swap over the text to do this is you just have to go into the files on your computer, which on Steam is pretty pretty quick to do. You just right-click the game, go to Manage, go to Browse Local Files, and it'll pull up the folder for that game. Once you're in that folder, there's a Data folder, and then Streaming Assets, and that'll show you all the fonts. And they're labeled font underscore, and then a 2-letter indicator for whatever the font is, and then there's one that says .bundle, and the other that says .manifest. I think .bundle is the actual font on all the characters, whereas .manifest is the text boxes, what appears in those, and the script of the game, basically. But I have no way to confirm that, because I can't actually see these files. They're pretty compacted. But all you have to do in order to change over the font, which, if you notice, the font is that wide font from the Japanese when I changed it to Japanese. You just copy the English and Japanese font files into a separate location. That way you can do whatever you need to do, and if something goes wrong, you can copy it back over, everything will be fine. But then you delete the original English font files. You change the name of the original Japanese files so that they say font underscore EN instead of font underscore JA. And then you copy back in the backup Japanese files because all those files need to be there for the game to just launch. Once you do that, your English text is going to look like this, with the wide text. And so far, I haven't come across any issues with changing the text like that. You'll notice everything is using that wide text now, and it's so much nicer. That is another problem I have with the game that we just saw there. Sometimes the game does take some time to load things. There have been a couple of times where I've jumped into a battle scene, and it'll hang at the introduction to that battle for a bit while it loads all the battle effects. There's also been a couple of times where I've cast a spell that has particle effects to it, and it'll just hang there for a second while it actually loads those textures. So just a heads up on that. One other thing I want to show is the airship. When you're flying, it'll change the angle of the map, which we've seen before in the remakes. The PlayStation version did this, and the Game Boy Advance version did this as well. But the shadow actually changes colors when you can land on something. You notice it's red there, it doesn't let me land there. If it's a normal shadow, then I can. I think that's really, really nice. Of course, it makes this look really awkward. I can't fly over that, even though I'm way above it, but there's also a little bit of graphical weirdness on this castle. You notice it took some of the ground with the tower there to make the 3D effect, but it's okay. But yeah, overall, I think these games are really good. Whether they're worth the price to you or not is kind of up to you. I feel like, at least for the first 3 games, the price point has been pretty good. I have a feeling that 4 through 6 are going to be a little bit more expensive, which I'm not too happy about, but I'm still going to get them. I would imagine those will see a $20 price point, but I'm still going to get them. I think these games are really good, and I'm really excited to see what the Super Nintendo games look like in this updated look. So, anyway, battle. The 1 and 3 battle themes are a lot more active in their battle themes, a lot more rock based. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording here. So if you've been watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Thank you for taking a look at this with me. Hopefully you give them a try, and especially if you can get your hands on them. Just as a trial thing, see if you can try them out, see what you think. I wouldn't say straight up buy these if you're on the fence, but I think they're worth it. There are some quirks that you're just gonna have to get used to, but that's just the nature of a remake. So, thank you for watching, and I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to Final Fantasy 12 now. So.